Hey there, Rick Sage, recording at the Rimrock Studios in Bishop, California. Welcome to Season 2 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, where I speak with retailers, brand managers, athletes, executives, and others in the outdoor biz and share their stories, tips, advice, productivity tricks, and ideas you can use to take your career or business to the next level. Today's podcast is brought to you by WordPress. I've used WordPress to build a number of websites, including Stillwater's Consulting and the Outdoor Biz Podcast. There are a number of themes and plugins available both free and for purchase, enabling you to easily create the custom look and feel you want. If you're starting an online business, publishing a blog, and looking to take your online presence to the next level, visit theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/WordPress and get going today. With simple installation tools and thousands of themes to choose from, you'll be up and running in no time. Go to theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/WordPress and get your site launched today. Wow, so here we are at episode 100. All I can say is thank you, thank you, thank you. I am forever grateful to all the great guests who have so generously given me their time, and to all you listeners out there. What began as a I'm just going to try 5 of these and see how it goes is now a twice weekly conversation listened to by over 30,000 of you. Thank you. For episode 100, I'm turning over the mic to my great friend and colleague Tim McGuire. Many of you have asked when I was going to answer my questions, so here it is, episode 100 with Tim McGuire at the mic. So for episode 100, I'm turning over the mic to my great friend and colleague Tim McGuire. Tim and I go way back. We worked at Adventure 16, Eagle Creek, and a bunch of other stuff. Been on many adventures, many Jimmy Buffett concerts, and many of you have asked when I was going to do this, answer my questions. So here we go. Tim, welcome to episode 100.
Thank you, Rick, and welcome to your show. Must be a little bit interesting to see how you do handling it from the other side of the mic. But before we get going, first off, I want to just thank you for creating Outdoor Biz Podcast.
Cool.
As a listener, thoroughly enjoyed your interviews. I spent a lot of time, as you know, traveling on planes, and I've really found them just super interesting.
Thanks.
I haven't listened to them all, but honestly, most. And
appreciate that.
What do they say? You've got a face for the radio.
Right.
I think you've been brilliant. Great voice, terrific pace, and just the right amount of engagement while letting your folks tell their stories.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
So okay, Mr. Says. So it's now time. It's now your turn to tell your story.
Here we go.
A little bit off script, not one of the questions you asked, but I just got to know why a podcast.
That's a good question. It's funny. I listened to a ton of podcasts, and when I launched Stillwater's Consulting, a year and a half ago, a year ago, whatever it was, I was thinking, how am I going to tell people about this? How am I going to promote this? How am I going to get it out there that this is now what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I thought, a podcast would be a great way to do it. So that was the original intent. And then, one of the podcasts I listen to most is the Tim Ferriss Show. And he's got a lot of info on his podcast, how to do podcasts. And he says, if you're thinking of doing it, just commit to 5. Don't say you're going to do 100 or you're going to, do this big hairy goal thing. Just do 5, see how you like it. Don't spend a lot of money. So I did 5, and here we are at 100. And I never really promoted the consulting thing because it was just so much fun talking to everybody. So that's how it came about. Yeah,
no, I think it's been fascinating for me to learn about more about my friends from the industry and meet a lot of new folks that I hadn't come across. So was there a specific intent or objective in the format for the podcast, or in terms of the audience you're trying to reach?
Yeah, Tim Ferriss, his podcast, he basically interviews all the people he knows and connections he makes through his wide range of connections globally, people in Silicon Valley and whatnot. And I thought, I've been in the outdoor biz for a long time, got a bunch of LinkedIn connections. Every time I go to the trade show, it's a lot of backslapping and having fun. So I'm pretty sure I can get a bunch of guests. And I thought that the Outdoor Retailer Show is like a huge high school reunion twice a year. Every time we go, we have great times, catch up with old friends that we haven't seen, swap stories, hugs, kisses, all of the above. And then we go dark for 6 months. And I thought, what, how can we continue some of that vibe after the show, some of that afterglow? And I thought, what about a podcast? What if I just interview all the folks that I talk to at the show and also have an opportunity to share their stories? Because a lot of us, we go to the trade shows, and some of us work behind the scenes. Not everybody gets to be sales guys like you and I, and get out in front of the audience, so to speak. So just trying to get everybody to share their story, whether they're a designer or a sales guy or a customer service person or whoever, and share their story and share where they come from and how they got into the biz. And it's been super fun. The conversations have been a blast, I got to tell you.
Yeah, you've definitely captured a few, industry legends, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm lucky there.
And it's become sort of a capsule for future generations, if you will, to be able to listen back on some of the pioneers and icons from within the outdoor industry. But so 99 shows, that's a lot of shows. Reflections or takeaways, any sort of consistent themes or messages that you've pulled out?
The consistent theme, I think a couple of them. One is, it seems like most folks got into this business as kids, right? Whether it was our parents or our grandparents, someone turned us on to fishing or hiking or camping or whatever it might be. So that's encouraging to see how that has those stories have come about. And then the other thing is a lot of the advice that people have, which is great. I mean, the industry has kind of grown up. It's still fairly young, so a lot of us have hacked our way in. And we talk about that a lot as how people, the various, I think Leif Romson said it best, the windows and doors and cubby holes and opportunities to get in the biz. We've all got a different way in, a lot of times. So it's been fun to hear those stories. And then a few folks, like Jordan Meade, he kind of grew up in the biz, so it was interesting to hear him follow his dad's footsteps. So those are the two themes I think that have been fun to learn about.
Yeah, and others like me is it's never too late to start. My story was a college senior. And, I remember listening to a few other episodes where folks kind of stumbled upon it a little bit later in life.
Exactly. It never is too late to start. You're right. I mean, we need all kinds of people. So if you want in, come on in.
All right, Rick, let's some of these questions, all of these questions will sound very familiar to you. So curious to see how you answered them. So the one you always start with, I think it's a great one, and we were kind of on that topic. But what specifically was your first exposure to the outdoors?
Yeah, it was my parents and grandparents. My grandfather was an avid outdoorsman. Back in the days of the American Sportsman on TV and Curt Gowdy announcing all the various things that he did, from hunting and fishing to archery to whatever it was in the Olympics, all those sports. He really took us out and taught us how to fish and taught us how to hunt and taught us how to camp. And growing up, my family, we camped a lot. My parents were into camping. Sometimes it was tent camping, but then we got a trailer, a 1959 Airstream, and took that all the way over. I remember the great trip was up to Yellowstone. That was a blast. And my parents didn't. My mom was really kind of, the Airstream was kind of a subset of our house, so we didn't sleep in sleeping bags. She actually, I remember, she took blankets and sheets, and she was washing the sheets in the campground up there one time. So that was a pretty funny story. But yeah, so it's family, and we all, love for it and been doing it ever since. And then I ended up, stumbling my way into a degree in outdoor recreation, which just solidified it even more.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that. Where did you go to college, and what specifically was your degree?
Yeah, I was a pretty good draftsman in high school and won a couple of awards, and was going to go to college to be an architect, and went to Cal Poly Pomona. And of course, the program was full. You couldn't get in for 2 years. So the first 2 years I had to do all my undergrad courses, psychology and all the boring stuff, and hated it, just hated it, and almost flunked out. I mean, they kicked me out and said, look, you got to go get your GPA up or you're going to get kicked out. So I went to a junior college and took a wildlife law enforcement class and an environmental biology class. And those guys were, both of those instructors were both way into the outdoors. I remember the biology class, the guy had some of the last slides of Glen Canyon before it was flooded. And so stumbling through the catalog at Cal Poly thinking, what am I going to do? And stumbled on outdoor recreation and signed up for that. Got a BS in it from Cal Poly and a BA in outdoor rec management from BYU, and the rest is history. It was great.
Any cute girls in those classes, or?
Yeah, a few, yeah. I was in the California Student Rec Society club on campus and was president my senior year, and got to go to a bunch of meetings, and we did they had a rec club, so we'd go paddling and climbing, and there were always cute girls around.
Good for you. And kind of an interesting, went on to get your master's degree.
Yeah.
A little bit kind of not unusual college, but one that might not think of.
Right, I'm not a Mormon.
You attending, right?
Right. Many of you know I'm not Mormon. Have none of those tendencies.
Yes, most of our adventures have been in bars. So
right, many have.
I assumed not a Mormon.
Right.
So how'd that happen?
Well, I kind of got recruited in my senior year as the student club president. We got to run the job fair at the statewide conference. And the job fair was, had been run for years, and we took it over, and it was all in-state California jobs. And I thought, there's a lot of us that want to go maybe to Colorado or to Montana, and I'm sure there's rec jobs all around the West. So we started reaching out to other universities first, and it was really the first time that job fair at that conference had out-of-state jobs, and the BYU professors were there, and I guess they were impressed by that and approached me and said, what are you going to do after you graduate? And I'm like, I'm going to go back to river guiding. I'm done. But they had to talk to me about this great program they have. It was an accelerator program, only took 14 months. And they offered me the Mormon price. I didn't have to pay the out-of-state price or anything. And thought, hey, for 14 months and at that price, I'm going. So I went. Yeah, it was great.
Well, good for you. And that led to what would be your first outdoor job?
I was already working. I think my first outdoor job when I graduated from Cal Poly, part of your senior year was you had to do an internship. And since I was into the outdoors and had already been backpacking by that time, I found an internship at Camp Palomar, 6th grade outdoor school on Palomar Mountain down here in San Diego, and got an internship there. They hired me I think there were 6 of us that first year. Most of them were from San Diego State, and I was the only outside guy. But we just went out there and kind of taught, outdoor classes, pond biology and animal tracking, and led the kids on hikes. And then that turned into a job as a teaching assistant. So I worked up there. I think I ended up working there for like 4 years. That was a great experience. And then through there on the weekends, met the A16 crowd and worked there. So those were kind of my first 2 outdoor jobs, unless you count keeping score at Little League games when I was 15. That was outdoor, but it wasn't outdoors.
You're not good enough to play. You were the scorekeeper.
I was a football guy. I
got it.
I liked baseball, but didn't like to play it. Played a little bit.
Yep. Cool. Well, I know. I mean, you've had such a diverse range of jobs. At least what I remember is Rick, the river guide you mentioned. I would call you a professional level photographer for sure.
Thank you.
Product guy, sales guy, wilderness advocate, now podcaster.
Right.
The river guiding part, I know that's something that even today lives with you. Things that you learned and experienced. Tell us a little bit about those days.
Yeah, those. Mo, I tell you, I wish I could do that again. I comment all the time on people that are thinking about going to guide school or something. It's like, don't not do it. It's one of the best jobs of your life. And I was at Palomar that first year as an intern, and one of the guys I was working with, one of the teachers, was from Colorado, and he approached me and said, what are you going to do in the summer? And I'm like, well, I haven't thought that far ahead yet, don't know. And he was running an outdoor camp up on the Kern Plateau for Kern River Tours. And he said, why don't you come and help me run this camp? And I thought, that could be fun. And he said, the only thing is you have to go to river guide school. You got to get all their training through that. And I thought, well, okay, whatever. So I went to river guide school up in the American River and was just hooked. I came back and told him, hey, sorry, I'm not running the camp. I'm going to be a river guide. And ended up working for them for about 4 years. And then the last 2 years, a couple of buddies and I started our own business up in Kernville, which is still there today. One of the guys, John Stallone, still runs it, called Mountain River Adventures, and we offered mountain bike trips, rock climbing trips, rafting trips, had a little retail store, and that's how I got into the more traditional outdoor biz. Those guys said, well, you worked at A16 and you know a little about retail. You go to the trade show and find some stuff for the store. So I went up to the Outdoor Retailer Show in Reno as a buyer and met the guys from Montbell, and they hired me as one of their first reps on the West Coast, with Harold Mullins and Kenny Ballard and Wendell and Jeff Weedman and a bunch of guys. So that's how I got into
all familiar names.
Yeah. We know. Yep, that was a great crew. We had a good crew. So
any epic river trips worthy? Or
man, yeah, one of my last river trips was an epic river trip. I was, through Eagle Creek, we had great connections with the Sobek guys, and David Ripley, great friend of many of ours. Sorry, he has left us, but he was fun. He got me into a trek in Nepal, so we did a river trip and a trek, and it was a 2-day walk to get to the put-in. And long story short, it just rained like crazy the second day we got on the water, and the water came up and it was just hideous. And all the boats but the one I was in flipped. 2 of them had rips, gashes on the side that we had to stop and repair. And it was really one of those things where like, geez, we might not make it out of here alive. And that was one of the last whitewater river trips I did. I've done a couple things since, but not to that level.
Yeah, I know you were up a few years ago up in Alaska, right, doing more of a float.
Yeah, with Steve Barker. We went up there to the Arctic. Yep. Awesome. If you get a chance to go up there, go there too. I've been lucky too, as you have, Tim, to travel around the world through some of these connections that I've made in the outdoor biz. It's been very fun. Yeah,
and develop your skill as a photographer, right? I know you've seen a lot of images, which are just incredible. How's that going today? Are you still involved in?
Yeah, it's going good. It's still
sharing that.
Yeah, it's still Rick Say's Photography. You can see that ricksaysphotography.com. It's still kind of a hobby. I can make a little bit of money from it, but obviously not a living. But I picked that up in junior high school as a kid, and just have evolved as photography has evolved over the years, and have been fortunate to be in some great places. And the more you shoot, the better you get. And It's been really fun. Yeah, I love it. I actually have a couple of workshops this summer up in the Sierra, one on fall photography, 2 of them on fall photography, one in Bishop and one in the Mono Basin. We've got a couple folks signed up for those, so that's going to be fun.
Great. Well, yeah, let's, as you would say, let's be sure to add that to the show notes at the end. I did learn that from you.
Thanks.
Listening.
We'll do that. Well, I'm glad you're learning something. Somebody's learning something. That's good.
I'm trying, but and we'll get a little bit more later into your sort of nonprofit work. But
thanks.
I understand you have a new job, just moving into that. What's that all about?
Just started. being an avid fly fisherman and around water as much as I am, I just stumbled on Aquatech water housings and got one for my camera to shoot. Mainly I shot fly fishing. Some of my images were in a great book. Seth Blackmore was on the show a couple episodes ago, and he wrote Fishing Trails 2, I believe it's called, with the guy that runs Partridge Lodge up in Bishop. They used some of my images. But, got a water housing, met those guys. They're down in Fountain Valley. And long story short, I did a couple of consulting projects for them, and they called looking for a director of sales. And I'm now the director of sales. So joining those guys. Awesome. I've already joined them. Been working there off and on a couple of weeks while help my dad recover from hip replacement surgery. But yeah, real excited about that. Great product, great guys, a lot of opportunity there. So it'll be fun.
Cool. And moving back into the city.
Back to the OC. Yeah. That'll be different.
We're excited to see how that role develops. And I guess, will you still continue to run Outdoor Biz podcast, or how do you plan to balance that? Yeah, I'm planning on it. It's going to, fortunately, the podcast, doing 2 episodes a week, it takes a fair amount of time, as you can imagine, not only the interview, but then processing and uploading and show notes and all that stuff. But I think I can continue that as long as I can find guests to interview in the off hours, early in the morning, on the weekends. But that's a plan to keep it going. I may have to cut it back to 1 episode a week, but I'm planning on 2, and we'll just see how it goes. Well, that assumes, the audience doesn't like my version of your podcast. I might hand it over. And you may, might have just lost a job here today. That's right. There you go. You could retire from Eagle Creek and just do the podcast. You'd be good at it. That's what I'm thinking. But anyway, like me, you've been in the industry a long time. As I talked about, a variety of different roles. Any particular accomplishments that you're most proud of? For me, it's probably the collection of accomplishments. I think, as you mentioned, I've been a sales guy, I've been a product guy, I've touched marketing a little bit, been a guide, been a, retail sales guy. And I think those are just
it's been such a great variety, and there's been, I've been fortunate to work with great teams all around too. So, we did some great things at A16 when we were there for the short time we were there.
Right.
The compadres we had on the floor there was very fun, and then I followed you to Eagle Creek, and more of the same there, and just everywhere I've been. Jansport, Dana Design for a little while, had a great team there. Umpqua in the fly fishing world. It's been really fun to have that well-rounded, broad outdoor stroke as opposed to just focusing on one brand for so many years. So it's been fun. I just think it's, the podcast is a tribute to that, because a lot of the folks that come on the show are folks that I've worked with in various capacities, and that's been great. And just, the beauty of this industry is the lifelong friends, true friends that really close buddies and
for sure,
guys and gals that you make that just you can call in a second and, hey, I'm driving through, can I crash on your couch? Whatever it is, no problem.
Yep.
So that's really, I think that's probably the biggest achievement I'm proud of, is all the friends around the world that I've made through the business.
Yeah, I think that's what we both talked about, is just this idea is it's a community.
Totally.
We call it the trade or the industry, but right. As you and I know, we always make a point of getting together every show.
Yeah.
Grabbing a bite to eat, a few drinks, and it's a reunion of sorts, coming back home and getting to meet everybody that you've worked with over the years. And there's no barrier, whether it's a competitor or similar product classification. It's just we're all good friends and outdoors folks.
Yeah, that's one of the other common themes that comes up, is we just whether we are competitors or even from other industries competing for the same consumer, we can still share a beer and swap stories, and it's no big deal. And that's one of the few industries I think that we can do that. And we've had a lot of fun.
So along the way, any specific mentors you'd like to call out, or who they might be and what specifically they left you with?
Yeah, man.
In terms of advice?
So many. Yeah. I don't know that I've gotten any specific advice, because I'm probably, as Ricky and Steve and a couple of those might tell you, I'm not the easiest guy to manage, I don't think. But even,
why is that?
I'm pretty independent. I take that. I get that from my grandfather. I'm pretty independent and can be stubborn, and that's the Spaniard in me, I guess. But I've learned by watching from all of you guys, including you. When I was in customer service and watching you as the sales manager, that's kind of how I learned to become a sales manager. I was watching you, and then learning from Ricky, and then learning the travel biz from Steve, and so many life lessons from Steve, and then the same thing from a bunch of folks. Maybe not working relationships, but people that you meet in the industry, in the halls, like guys like Larry Harrison and Jim Thompson. One of my first field trips in outdoor recreation back at Cal Poly Pomona was to one of the wilderness experience factories in Chatsworth, and met Jim and Greg, and they don't remember that, but I'll never forget it. Meeting those guys and looking at what they had done and thinking, man, this is what I want to do. So I think it's been great. Guys, Skip Yowell is another one that comes to mind. Just the way Skip connects everybody and always has a positive word and a drink to share with you. So it's just so many people. Yeah, it's unlimited.
I think your point too, in this industry, you don't necessarily have to meet your mentor. I think just look up to them and be familiar with how they do things or what they've done. And you mentioned some great ones out there.
Yeah, there's it's amazing. And the fortunate thing for a lot of us is they're still around. We can still, Larry Harrison was on the show the other day. So there's, Steve Barker, Ricky. I play golf with Ricky every once in a while. So it's great that we can still get together with them and see them at trade shows and other places.
Yeah, and it's terrific too. I know a number of those folks are even kind of offering up their mentorship to young groups coming up. Specifically thinking of Skip Yowell Leadership Academy and the work they're doing to help out there. So
that's awesome.
That's terrific. So
we'll have to link to that in the show notes. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll make note. Yes.
I should make you do the show notes for this show.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I know a lot of behind the scenes work goes into these things. So I'm gonna pass the mic back to you and when we're done. But yes, I know, Rick, you asked folks about nonprofit work that they do. What kind of things are you involved with these days?
Yeah, I'm still heavily involved in the California Wilderness Coalition. I joined the board, a few years ago, and working to protect the wilderness in California. It's a really fun group of folks. We get together a few times a year. We just had our annual fundraising drive, so if I didn't catch you on the email, it's not too late to join. $35. We'll put a link to that in the show notes too. And then Steve Barker is real involved in the Alaska Wilderness League. I've been, in and out of involvement there, doing some stuff for them. And I was on the board for the Eastern Sierra Interpretive Association for about the last year, I guess. And they do a lot of stuff up and down the Eastern Sierra. I love Bishop. My grandfather used to live there. I've been going up there since I was a kid. And they do a lot of stuff up there. And they also run when you travel on the east side from Lone Pine, actually from Death Valley, all the way up to some of the Tahoe forests, they run all those Forest Service stores that you stop in and grab a map or a fire permit or whatever. ECR runs those. So was involved with those guys, taking a little hiatus here as I transitioned down to Orange County, but hope to get back involved with those guys. They do a lot of great work. And then FOR, back on my river guide days, we did a lot of work with Friends of the River. And, I remember there was a campaign one year. We had all the guests come, and we made a pitch to him about some hydroelectric project that was going on, and we stopped that. So, public lands are, there is a lot of it, but there's never enough of it, as my buddy Alan Pietrasano likes to say. So I'm always trying to keep those places we like to play safe and protected. And one of the things that I think is interesting these days, though, I think Nate Simmons pointed it out the other day. He's got a great take on the fact that even the hunters and the fishermen and the mountain bikers and the off-road guys, we all play and love the same things. It's an opportunity to get together and, push back on these politicians for protection because they want to keep us divided. And I think if we can, somehow rally the troops, and everybody has to have their own space to play. And there's plenty for everybody. So we just need to keep that in mind and keep these protections and these battlegrounds in the forefront and make sure to get out there and vote. Yeah,
definitely agree that just there's opportunity and in leverage, right?
Exactly.
As a whole, we're a force, as OIA might say. I'm going to guess you're always going to have a connection back to the Eastern Sierra. That's I think of you as that guy. So I'm sure you'll be getting up there fishing. And
I learned to fish, learned to drive, learned to do a lot of things up there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spot.
Yeah, it is.
Recently, my wife and I took a drive up 395 for the first time in a number of years, and just was amazed by the majesty and the beauty of the mountains. And
we got to get on a backpack trip up there again. We did that one trip, which I overloaded us with food, but we need to do that again. I won't take so much food this time.
Yeah, no, I've gotten a little smarter. I can't carry as much as I used to. For sure. Yeah. So any suggestions, advice for folks wanting to get into the outdoor biz or grow their career?
Yeah, I think the thing is, like a lot of my guests have said, figure out what your passion is and what you're passionate about. And if it is something related to the outdoors, go get it. I mean, don't let anything stop you. Don't let, people are hard to get a hold of, or I don't know anybody. Just go. Just jump in, call somebody, email Tim, email me, go down and visit somebody at Eagle Creek. There's always, I love the way Lee said, there's doors and windows and side alleys and back alleys. There's ways in. Don't let anything stop you. If you really want to do it, go for it. It's just, we've just talked about it. It's a lifetime of great friends and great fun. And there's work, you got to dig your head in on spreadsheets sometimes and go to places you may not want to go and have conversations you don't want to have, but just go. It's so much fun.
Yeah. I think there's, an element of patience and persistence. If it's something you really want to do and you stick with it, and opportunities are going to come your way.
Plenty of opportunities, and it's growing, and we need all kinds of different folks that, as the business grows, it gets more sophisticated. So we need some of you guys out there with all that technological know-how about, logarithms and things that Tim and I can't even say. So
or spell.
Exactly. As we get, start analyzing analytics and learning more about the customer and the supply chain, and we need you guys. So come join the tribe.
Yep, good points. Good call out. You mentioned fly fishing. You mentioned golf. Other routines that you have to sort of keep your sanity, health. Are you into meditation? Any specific exercising?
Yeah, that's another good question. It's funny. I've always been an exercise guy. I mean, I banged up my knees in junior high school, so I've always had to work out just to be able to walk in some cases. But so I've always been a fitness guy. Golf, and that's another thing my grandfather taught me. But again, as I listen to the Tim Ferriss podcast and Ariana Huffington and some of these other folks that I learned about through Tim Ferriss, it's interesting that some of the daily routines that those folks have and some of the ways that they avoid distractions and electronics. And I've adopted a lot of those. I have a pretty formalized morning routine, where I get up and I grab my coffee, and the first thing I do actually is I meditate for about 20 minutes, and then I do a little writing in a journal, and then I grab my coffee and kind of scan through the news and stuff. Don't get too tied up in that, and then start the day, and then do the same thing at the end of the day. Come home, sit down, turn off the TV, do a little reading, do a little writing, have a cup of tea or something. I have trouble sleeping, so a cup of the sleepy time tea with a big womp of honey in it helps me go to sleep, and just kind of ease into the day and ease out of the day. And then during the day I try to maintain a pretty detailed calendar to make sure I get everything done and don't forget, because a lot of times if it's not written down, I'll forget it, and then you go, oh God, I didn't call Tim back. Dang it, whatever it happens to be. So
I was gonna mention that. No, but, so and you're able to pull that off when you're traveling as well. I know you spend a lot of time in the car, heading places that you make a point of it. Sounds like
I try to. Yeah, I mean sometimes you know how it gets at trade shows or backpacking trips or adventure trips. It kind of gets all blown up, but I try to at least get some personal time at the beginning and at the end of each day, so I can just may not get to meditate and may not get to journal and all those other things, but at least I can spend 10-15 minutes alone thinking about, okay, this is what we're going to do today. I remember when I was in the Caucasus Mountains a couple years ago, just some of those days were challenging, and I was a little worried that I wasn't going to be able to make it because my legs are pretty banged up. So I just kind of get my mind right in the morning and think, okay, we're going to do this 16,000 foot pass today. It's going to hurt, but you can get it done, and then you just go get the day done. And at the end of the day, same thing. Hey, I made it, I made it up. I made it down. I can still walk. All is good. All is right with the world, So yeah, that's kind of what I try to do every day.
Yeah. It's all relative. I think,
exactly.
If you're healthy and waking up in the morning, that's a good start.
Yeah.
All right, so this next question I know gets some of your guests squirming in their seats a little bit. It did me. I knew it was coming, and I as I said, I was honest and forthright in the fact I'm not a big book reader. I do listen a lot and so forth. But I know when your guests talk about books, you seem to be pretty familiar with the authors and the titles. So I'm going to guess you are pretty heavy into literature and so forth. But tell us a little bit about that.
I read a lot. I mean, that was another one of those things that my parents instilled in us early on. I think as soon as I could read, whatever grade that was, the local library had a book reading club, and my sister were always competing on who could read the most books, and just been an avid reader all my life. And I think, there's so many great stories out there, whether they're adventure stories or life stories. And for me, it's a combination of, I like to learn something new all the time. I always want to be learning something, whether it's a way to do a podcast or how to write better or how to ask better questions or how to tie this knot to make your fly look more realistic to the fish, whatever it is. Always trying to read stuff to learn. And then some of the adventure stories, the classic Ernest Shackleton story, Endurance. I mean, that's one of my favorite books ever. It's just a great, amazing story of teamwork and perseverance and, not only the fact that these guys are willing to follow this guy halfway around the world, but then when the shit hit the fan, they were still following him, and nobody mutinied. So that's a pretty amazing story about leadership and teamwork. And then another favorite book of mine is back from my sports days. They Call Me Coach by John Wooden. And he was really, he was one of the great coaches at UCLA, and that's a good book about his pyramid and the things that he teaches his athletes and stuff. So like I say, I try to read a little bit every night. So I'm reading a great book by Walt Disney, about Walt Disney right now, it's a huge, thick book, but it's pretty interesting about his life and how he got to be as creative and how Disneyland got created. So love to read.
What's that? The title of that book?
It's called Walt Disney by Neil Gabler. Huh. Or Gabler. Yeah. I'm not sure I said that right.
Gabler. Yeah. I mean, fascinating character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of key things you can take away from Walt's approach
I'm still
the
waiting.
business.
I'm still waiting for the dang monorail. They told us we were going to be riding monorails around when we were kids at Disneyland. Whoa, come on, man. Where is it? We got to get that thing going. Get out of these cars and get on the monorail.
Yep. Yeah, we're getting closer. I watched a few months ago, what was it, Falcon Heavy, the Elon Musk SpaceX rocket. And I got to tell you, I keep watching that video. It just, to me, it brought to the present, the future. I always imagined this idea that we're probably going to have a person on Mars in the next 10 years. It feels amazing. Like, and that will be amazing. Yeah. But and then do you give books as gifts, or?
I don't give books as gifts enough, not very often, but I try. It's in the forefront of my mind always, and every time I get a good book and I think make a great gift, I'm off to something else. So I need to be mindful of trying to do that more often.
Yeah, good. I like receiving books as gifts, but I don't. Yeah, I have a hard time picking one out that I think other people will enjoy. But
it's a personal decision a lot of times.
Yep. All right. So next question. I always like this one when you ask it, and love to hear your answer. You get you're a gear guy. Been in the industry a long time. Have plenty of toys, I know. But favorite outdoor gear purchase under $100. And I know you're getting pro deals and industry stuff. So what value of $100 roughly?
Yeah. For me, it's under $100. There's two things. One is a headlamp, and I don't care which headlamp you buy, whether it's a Black Diamond or a Petzl or whatever, just, a good headlamp, because like many people have said on the show, and as well as I do, when you're out hiking, camping, whatever, it never fails to get dark, and you're always seem to be looking and stumbling to find something in the dark, and a good headlamp is just invaluable. And then
just lighting in general these days, and that I think what is it? Illumination is the category. Right. All I hear when I go to the show or talk to retailers, what's hot.
Yeah. Well, and I had the guy from Lucy Lights, John Salzinger, was on the show a few episodes ago, and that's a fabulous tool. I mean, man, it's solar, so it charges during the day, and it's inflatable, and it weighs nothing. You can use it anywhere. So I've got a couple of those that I use in the back of my truck. That's a great piece of illumination. Those are great guys, so check those guys out. And then the other one is Chris Beek mentioned this he was the first guy, I think, to mention it, and I'm a firm believer in having one with you all the time as a compass. I think
compass.
You and I are us old.
That's just an app. You don't have an app for that.
Well, the app doesn't always work. I mean, sometimes your batteries will die, or sometimes something like when we're in when we were in Nepal, stuff kind of went haywire, and electronics. I'm not sure we had electronics, but they wouldn't have worked. They would have gotten wet. So a compass, and you got to have a map with that too, because if you don't have a map, the compass does you no good. So
I think that's great advice for any millennial hiker or outdoors person today, is that batteries can go dead, or if you can lose reception, what have you. So a good old map and compass. And I just love maps. I mean, maps are awesome.
Oh, I know.
Love drawing on
Pour
maps.
Over maps, exactly.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, anything else, Rick, you'd like to say or ask your audience?
And I would just hope that everybody keeps getting out there and playing and having fun and, protecting the lands that we love, and, don't ever stop. I mean, just because you have banged up knees like I do, or whatever your thing might be, keep going. It's just so many ways you can go enjoy the outdoors. Just get out there and do it and have fun at it.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you, offering me the mic to ask the questions. It's been fun. Learned a few things for sure. Where can people find you? Email, Twitter, Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on all those socials. Email ricksays@gmail.com or rick@theoutdoorbizpodcast.com. I'm on Twitter, Rick_Says, at RSays Photos on Instagram, and at the Outdoor Biz Podcast on Instagram, Facebook. As much as I am probably a troglodyte at all those things, now that I've got a photo business and a podcast, I got to be all over them. So you can probably find me. Yep,
you definitely do. And again, thanks for all that you've done to create a format, a platform for bringing us together to tell stories and laugh and learn. And so hopefully, as your new career takes off, there'll still be some time for Outdoor Biz podcast down the road, and we'll celebrate 200 and 300th episode.
That'll be fun
down the road. But so that's it. I'm going to hand the mic back to you, Rick.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Tim. It's been great. I'm glad you were the one to take over and do episode 100. You and I go way back and have had a ton of fun in the outdoor biz. I know we're not done yet. And thanks to all the listeners. It's, as I said, what started out as I'm just going to try 5. Here we are at 100, and over 30,000 of you guys have listened. So I'm just so honored that you think it's fun and you think you're getting something out of it, and we'll keep doing it. So have a good one. Yep. Thanks, Tim. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Tim McGuire behind the mic. You can catch up with Tim by email at tim_McGuire@vfc.com. And you can catch up with me by email at rick@theoutdoorbizpodcast.com. You'll find links to everything we discussed in the show notes at theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/episode 100. That's 100 if you're typing that in. Be sure to hit your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. Thanks for listening. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. I've used Audible for many years now. I'm on the road a lot, and Audible allows me to enjoy the great books I discover or are recommended by friends. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/theoutdoorbizpodcast. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Start your 30-day free trial with Audible today. If you want more of the Outdoor Biz podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast. Be sure and go to theoutdoorbizpodcast.com where you'll find all the episodes, show notes, and much, much more. Thanks for listening, and until next time, be sure to make time to get outside.